Hello everyone, you're on the channel Scary Story. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that'll make you think twice before exploring abandoned places. This isn't just some campfire tale. This is something that happened to my uncle when he was a teenager, a story he only told me once, his voice hushed and his eyes wide with a fear that time hadn't erased. It all started in the summer of '87. My uncle, let's call him David, was 17. He lived in a small, sleepy town nestled in a valley, a place where everyone knew everyone, and the most exciting thing to happen was the annual county fair. But on the edge of town, cutting through the base of Blackwood Mountain, was something that held a dark fascination for the local kids: the old Northgate Railway Tunnel. The tunnel had been abandoned for decades. The tracks were long gone, ripped up for scrap metal during the war. The entrance was a gaping black mouth of crumbling brick, partially hidden by a curtain of ivy. Locals whispered stories about it. Some said it was haunted by the ghosts of workers who died during its construction. Others claimed strange lights were seen dancing in its depths on moonless nights. Most people just said it was unsafe and warned their children to stay away. Of course, for a group of restless teenagers like David and his friends, Mark and Sarah, unsafe and haunted were practically invitations. They saw the tunnel as the ultimate test of courage, a local legend waiting to be debunked. So on a sweltering July evening, armed with a couple of cheap flashlights and a shared sense of invincibility, they decided to be the ones to finally walk its entire length. They met just as dusk was painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. As they approached the tunnel, a sudden chill seemed to emanate from its dark opening, a stark contrast to the warm summer air. The cheerful chirping of crickets fell silent, replaced by an unnerving quiet. Even Mark, usually the loud, boisterous one, lowered his voice to a whisper. "You guys still sure about this?" Sarah asked, her flashlight beam trembling slightly as she pointed it into the abyss. The light didn't seem to penetrate the darkness. It was as if the tunnel was swallowing it whole. "Don't chicken out now," Mark scoffed, trying to sound braver than he felt. He took the lead, stepping over the moss-covered rubble at the entrance. David followed, his heart starting to pound a little faster. The moment he crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped dramatically. The air grew heavy and stale, carrying a strange metallic smell, like old blood and rust. The entrance shrunk behind them into a small, bright rectangle of twilight, their only connection to the outside world. Their flashlight beams cut weak circles in the oppressive darkness, revealing damp, glistening walls covered in grime and graffiti from generations of daredevils. Water dripped from the arched ceiling, each drop echoing loudly in the profound silence. They walked for what felt like an eternity. The initial nervous chatter had faded, replaced by the sound of their own footsteps and ragged breaths. The metallic smell grew stronger, and David felt a growing sense of unease, a primal feeling of being watched. He kept glancing over his shoulder, but there was nothing there but the suffocating blackness. About halfway through, or what they guessed was halfway, Mark's flashlight began to flicker. He smacked it against his palm, and it died completely, plunging his section of the tunnel into absolute darkness. "Great," he grumbled. "Just great." "Here, stick close to me," David said, moving his beam to light the path for his friend. It was then that they heard it, a faint sound, coming from deeper within the tunnel. It was a soft, rhythmic scraping. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Probably just a rat," Mark said, though his voice lacked conviction. But the sound wasn't like a small animal. It was heavier, more deliberate. Scrape, pause, scrape. It was getting closer. Panic began to set in. The fun adventure had curdled into something terrifying. "Let's go back," Sarah pleaded. But just as she turned, her flashlight beam caught something on the wall. It was a message, freshly scratched into the grime. The letters were crude, jagged, as if scraped with a sharp rock. It read, "Don't turn around." A cold dread washed over them. Who could have written that? And when? They hadn't passed anyone. The scraping sound stopped. The silence that followed was somehow even worse. Every nerve in David's body was screaming at him to run, but his feet felt glued to the floor. Then a new sound began. A low, guttural breathing, seemingly coming from all around them. It was a wet, rattling sound, like something was struggling for air. And it was close. Very close. That's when Sarah screamed. Her flashlight beam was pointed down the tunnel, ahead of them, shaking violently. In the wavering circle of light, a figure was standing. It was tall and gaunt, unnaturally so. Its limbs were long and spindly, bent at odd angles. It was completely still, a dark silhouette against the deeper blackness of the tunnel. It had no discernible features, just a shape that was fundamentally wrong. Pure, instinctual terror took over. They didn't need a second look. They turned and ran. They bolted back the way they came, stumbling over unseen debris, their lungs burning. The sound of their own panicked footsteps was drowned out by the scraping sound, which had started again, now faster, more frantic, right behind them. Scrape, 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 scrape! It was keeping pace with them. David didn't dare look back. He just focused on Sarah's back in front of him, on the shrinking rectangle of light that was the tunnel entrance. The heavy, wet breathing was at his neck. He could almost feel hot, foul air on his skin. He risked a quick glance behind. What he saw has been burned into his memory ever since. The figure was no longer walking. It was skittering along the walls and ceiling on all fours, its long limbs contorting as it scrambled after them with impossible speed. Its head was craned at a 90-degree angle, and from the silhouette David could just make out 2 pinpricks of faint red light where its eyes should be. He screamed and pushed himself to run faster. He could see the entrance, the green leaves of the ivy, the last rays of sunlight. It was only 20 feet away, 10 feet. They burst out of the tunnel, collapsing onto the damp grass, gasping for air, their hearts hammering against their ribs. They scrambled to their feet and didn't stop running until they reached the safety of the town's streetlights. They never spoke about what they saw in the tunnel, not to each other, not to anyone. There were no words to describe it. It was a shared trauma, a secret they locked away. Mark moved out of state a year later. Sarah became quiet and withdrawn. And David, my uncle, never went near the edge of town again. Years later, when the town council decided to finally seal the tunnel for good due to safety concerns, the construction crew reported something strange. Deep inside the tunnel, they found old, rusted tools and a set of human remains dating back to the original construction in the late 1800s. But alongside them, they found something else. Scrawled all over the walls, in a circle around the remains, were the same jagged words written over and over again. Don't turn around. So if you ever find yourself standing before an old dark tunnel, thinking of a little adventure, remember my uncle's story. Remember the scraping sound and the thing with red eyes. Some places are left abandoned for a reason, and some secrets are meant to stay buried in the dark. Thanks for listening to this scary story. If you have a story you want to share, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there.